Hey guys, thanks for watching this presentation, Introduction to Clinical Research for the Clinical Trials Guru. One of the things I get asked the most by far and have been asked to create is some kind of just overview of what clinical research is for people who don't know the first thing about research. So this is perfect for people who want to work in the industry, or people who are just got hired maybe as study coordinators. And if you're a research site manager, have your coordinators or your new hires watch this. This is why this was created. So basically, this is like, and I'm not going to spend very much detail on each slide, all right? I've done a DVD on this. I've done tons of free videos on my blog. My DVD is only $19.99. It's called Introduction to Clinical Research. If that's too expensive, I have a Kindle book, Introduction to Clinical Research, for $2.99, and it covers everything you'll see here in greater detail. So I'm going to try to keep this one short, but just provide some color commentary to the slides. And for those of you watching at home, if you're not on YouTube, okay, go to theclinicaltrialsguru.com right now, and on the Introduction to Clinical Research tab, click on it. You'll see this presentation with this video, so you can still watch this. And underneath it, you'll see the actual presentation that I'm going through. So when you push right, it jumps to the different topics. And this is the right arrow. And if you push the left arrow, it takes you back. Okay. So you can follow along. You can take however much time you want individually per slide. But this video just gives a brief overview, so let's get right into it. Hope you guys find it useful. So what is a clinical trial? A clinical trial is a series of tests that scientists need to conduct when they come up with new ideas for new drugs, new medical procedures, or medical devices. For the duration of the entire clinical trial process, these are called investigational products, or IP. When it comes to surgical procedures, oftentimes the new surgical tools, devices have to be FDA approved as well. And FDA approval is needed by drug companies who would like to make claims on their products, okay? So an example I always give is asthma. Okay, so what happens when a scientist at a drug company is looking to come out with a new drug for asthma? He's in the lab with a team of colleagues, and they're looking at the biological mechanisms of asthma. They brainstorm different treatment solutions. They use computer models and other analytical tools to understand what molecules or symptoms contribute to asthma symptoms. They then create a molecule that addresses their solution and synthesize it in a lab. With a molecule design, they move on to preclinical trials, which involve testing the drug on animals, such as lab rats, guinea pigs, animal studies. And we're going to continue using this asthma study as an example. Okay, and then from preclinical trials, which are done on animals, we move to phase 1 clinical trials, which are first in human studies. Okay, so let's get right into phase 1 studies. The first introduction of the drug to healthy human volunteers. So with the asthma example, it's being used on not people with asthma, but healthy volunteers. The only purpose is to determine the toxicity level of the drug in the human body. Once they establish a safe dosage level, they basically increase the dosage until they start seeing side effects, and then they'll down titrate. So these healthy volunteers get paid a lot, and they're stayed in inpatient facilities. It can last anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. It's not unusual for them to get a couple $1,000 when it's all said and done, 50 to $100 a day. So just do the math. I've seen many studies pay $6,000 for like 4 weeks. Okay, so phase 2 is the first time the drug's being tested on individuals with the actual medical condition that the drug is targeting. So in our asthma example, this is the first time in phase 2 that the drug or the IP, investigational product, will be used on people with asthma. And the purpose here, since they already know the dose at which the IP will start causing side effects in healthy people, the purpose of phase 2 is to determine the safety and efficacy of the investigational product. So they're still doing safety measurements, but they're also making sure that the drug actually works at that dosage. Data from both endpoints are collected and analyzed, and these are double-blind studies usually, which means nobody knows what the researcher nor the study participant know whether they're getting placebo or the actual investigational product. Phase 3 is the last clinical trial that the drug company conducts before submitting an NDA, and these are called pivotal trials usually. They'll be initiated once it is established in phase 2 studies that the drug is reasonably effective and is also safe and well tolerated at the dose. And the purpose is to test and observe on a much longer time scale and over a much larger patient population, so it can last anywhere from 8 months to 4 years. One particular trial, they can enroll up to 2,500 patients usually, and they're double blind as well. Okay, so when the phase 3 study is done, the drug company submits an NDA, a new drug application, to the FDA, and the FDA responds in one of 3 ways. They approve the drug, they reject the drug, or they tell the drug company to redo the phase 3 study, often by changing a few parameters to get more reliable data. That happens a lot, actually. Phase 4, post-marketing drugs. So with this asthma study, the asthma study may already be approved and on the market, but the drug company may want to make more claims about the drug than they're allowed to, and so the FDA will tell them to do a phase 4 study, and that's what those are. They're basically post-marketing studies. Clinical trial phases, so between each phase, the drug companies will update the FDA on its findings and work with the FDA to come up with the best way to further test the drug safety and efficacy in the upcoming phases. Alright, so now who is in charge of regulating a clinical trial? So there's 3 groups. There's the IRB, which are the ethics committees. There's the clinical research organizations, that should be CRA or CRO, or monitors. CRAs are monitors. And then the FDA. Okay, so the IRB, they govern every single clinical trial. Their purpose is to ensure that every patient is safe. They must approve a study before it begins, so they're in charge of reviewing the protocols to make sure that it's safe enough for people to join and there's no unnecessary risk. They must confirm that only patients who are able to make sound judgments on their own are enrolled. Ensures that control groups using the study are also getting the best possible FDA-approved treatment. This is especially important in cancer studies where you can't give someone a placebo. So if they're not getting the study drug, the control group has to still get the best possible FDA-approved treatment for life-threatening conditions. And these IRBs are independent of the drug companies and the researchers. So they're neutral third parties. Then you got the FDA. FDA staff members meet with researchers and perform inspections. They can audit in a clinical trial at any time, either a research clinic, a CRO, or a sponsor. And there's different kind of findings. So there's a for-cause audit is triggered if your site raises suspicion that it's not conducting studies according to good clinical practice. They may find no deviations, which is rare. They may find minor deviations, which is often the case. Or notice of adverse findings, otherwise known as a 483. Those are generally bad. You have the CROs. Sponsor and CRO audits will often try to help you resolve any issues they find. So they can audit you as well. And of course they can because they're paying for it. So study startup, you got the regulatory documents. Okay, so the most important form is the 1572. This form is filled out by the coordinator or the PI and signed by the PI. It basically, the PI's filing official paper with the FDA stating that it is their responsibility ultimately for the conduct of the trial at their site and that it will be done in accordance with good clinical practice. Then you got the protocol, which is basically the recipe to be followed for the study, created by the sponsor. IRB approved it. Protocol deviations do happen, and we talk about that later. Then you keep the up-to-date medical licenses of the investigators on file. You got the drug brochure, which is also known as the investigator's brochure. These are lengthy. They could be up to 300 pages. It contains all the known information of the drug being studied. So, for example, in our asthma drug, if we're doing a phase 3 study, the investigator brochure is going to be thick, and it's going to talk about all the findings and the safety profile from phase 2 and the phase 1 and the preclinical and it also gives you as much information as the researchers who created the drug um, know or think they know about the investigational product. Delegation of Duties Log is really important. It lists everyone involved in the study at the clinical research site level. And the FDA has been really cracking down on this one a lot. They want to make sure that only people who are on the Delegation of Duties Log and delegated certain tasks are the ones doing it, and they want to make sure that they're qualified to be doing those tasks. Protocol amendments, so sponsors decide to rewrite, change, add, or remove anything from the original protocol. These must be approved by the IRB. Of course, you got to file these documents. Every time you communicate with the IRB, sponsor, CRO, FDA, you keep the documents related to your correspondence. You got the financial disclosure forms. So the PIs and other investigators must disclose with the FDA, sponsor, and IRB that there are no conflicting financial interests with the outcome of the study. This is done to add a layer of transparency. Generally speaking, if you have more than $50,000 in the study sponsor's company stock, this needs to be disclosed. It doesn't mean you can't do the study. You just need to disclose it, that you do have a financial interest. Other forms, there's advertisement, approval, and letters. The IRB approval form, lab certificates. You'll get familiar with those. So here's about recruiting study participants, and I got a completely different book, and there's going to be a whole other presentation, just like this one, on how to recruit clinical trial study participants. But just real quick, there are two ways to recruit, either directly from the PI or their colleagues from the practice, or advertising, which are flyers, radio ads, TV ads, social media ads, Google ads. Those things have to be approved by the IRBs as well. And this kind of shows you more about it. Then you got the site selection visit. So before your research clinic is awarded the study, a monitor from the sponsor or the CRO will make a physical appearance at the clinical site to make sure that your facility has the resources it needs to accommodate the study. The monitor will ensure that everyone has GCP training, that the facility has the proper equipment, that you have the source documents in place. And we talk about source documents here. Source documentation is any written or spoken information regarding the investigation which is documented and relevant to the outcome of the study. Basically, whenever any piece of data that you are going to be recording needs to be written down on a source document. Usually you're responsible for creating the source document templates. In the past, sponsors have given that to sites, but the FDA frowns upon that because some sponsors made source docs that were incorrect, and investigators collected data or did not collect certain data that was needed. And so sponsors don't do that anymore because they don't want the responsibility of, if they make mistakes, they don't want that to be their responsibility. So of course they pass it on to the research sites themselves. Investigator meetings are when the sponsor and CRO host large meetings for all the research clinics that will be participating in a particular study. They will talk about the study, train you on the protocol, inform you on what to look out for. And they're generally pretty fun to go to. Okay, so now running the study. So you got the informed consent. And the informed consent is the form that informs the patient of the purpose of the trial, as possible risks and benefits of their participation. They are approved by the IRB. And the process of consent is an ongoing basis. Okay, so each time the protocols change or each time the study participant or a family member has a question, you're kind of going through the informed consent again. Okay, it's not just a one-time event, it's an ongoing process. Study protocol. A big part of running a clinical trial is following the protocol. Any deviation from the protocol is required that deviations are reported to IRBs, and there's certain protocol deviation forms that sponsor will have for you to send to the IRB. Then of course you have to report all adverse events. So even if you don't think it's related to the study drug, you still need to report it. For example, if someone in the asthma study had a hot dog to eat and choked on the hot dog, and that's an adverse event, choking. If they went to the hospital that's a serious adverse event. Okay, and it's not related to the drug at all, but you still have to report it. Budgets and contracts. Again, I have a whole nother book on this on Kindle for like $2.99, and I'll do another presentation on this. Study participants get compensated, usually $50 for each outpatient visit, and during inpatient studies, they get paid more. So basic study visits are screening visit. This is where the informed consent occurs. This is where we find out if the study participant actually qualifies for the study. If they do, they'll have a second visit, which is a randomization visit. They'll be randomly assigned to one of 3 classes of drugs via an automated system, which generates random and double blind. Okay, so we don't know, the study participant won't know which of these 3 they've been assigned to, okay, and neither will the researcher themselves. So they can get the study drug, they can get a comparative standard of treatment, or the placebo, and the patient will be kept on that same automated choice each time. Okay, so if someone's getting placebo at randomization visit, they'll get placebo at all their other visits. And throughout the study, they'll be required to come back regularly for regularly scheduled visits and follow the protocol for that. Of course, they can withdraw at any time. These will be done at early termination visits, and they basically just do safety assessments there. So storing the investigational product must be double locked, must be temperature controlled, limited access. Usually the PIs, pharmacists, study nurse, study coordinators are granted access. Everybody else is not. Sponsors and CROs can go there. Your monitor will go there and check and do investigational product accountability from time to time and make sure that you're dispensing the right amount, that you have enough, and that you're not losing it, and that you're storing it properly. Electronic data collection. This is where you enter the data that you've written down from the source documentation into an online secure portal where the sponsor can quickly look at the data and analyze it almost in real time, and then they'll issue you queries and you gotta solve them. And then study closeout. When a study closes out, the research clinic's responsible for keeping the information about the trial on file between 5 to 10 years. Keep in mind you can still get audited even 5 years after a study's over. The FDA can still audit it. So that's the Prezi in a nutshell. We went through all that. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to go through the slides yourself, just go to my blog at theclinicaltrialsguru.com and click on the Introduction to Clinical Research page. And thanks for watching. I really hope it helps. Dan?